In this video, I'm going to show you how to use DataStore scoping to more efficiently save your data in your game. If you don't know, DataStore is basically a way to save your data in your game, for example, leaderboard information like coins, and basically have it available for people when they come back. So the first thing we want to do is go into our game settings and make sure your game is published through file and publish if it's not. So go to game settings and security and then say enable access to API services. So basically what you need to do, I'm going to create a script in server script service, and this is basically a script that'll run on the server. So first we want to define our data store service. So let me go ahead and say local data store service equals game get service data store service, like that. And then what we want to go ahead and do is create a data store or find a data store. This will be done automatically. If one isn't created, it'll create it. So what we want to go ahead and do is say local, well, in this case, say like player data equals data store service. And actually, normally what you do if you weren't using scoping was just define it like this. So data store service and then say get data store. And then you put in the name like this. So we'll say player data. So that's how you do it normally. So next what you want to go ahead and do is basically create a data store object. I think that's what it's called or something like that. So I'll say local data store options. That's what I meant to say. Equals instance.new data store options in parentheses like that. Then what we want to go ahead and do is say data store options dot all scopes equals true. And this means that we can basically look through all scopes, or in other words, basically a folder stored on Roblox's servers. So if this is turned on, then we can look for specific scopes. So next what you want to go ahead and do is define the scope. And what I've been doing is just setting it to a blank string. You can't set it as nil, but basically when I do that, I can get the scope later instead of defining a scope early on. Next, we want to pass in our options. So we'll say data store options. That's the value we created right here. So then let's just do a pretty simple example. So let's say local players equals game get service players, and then we'll just do a simple player added event. So players dot player added connect function, and then get the player that joins the game. I'm not sure if this is still an issue, but you had to join a physical actual game for this to work. So if this doesn't work, try putting in a print here. So just say like print test and see if you're getting any output. And if you are, then it is firing when the player joins. So next, what we want to go ahead and do is make a P call, and this is basically a protected call, in other words. And if anything goes wrong with the data store, then you're pretty much safe. I mean, obviously it wouldn't still work, but it's not going to break the rest of your script, basically. So I'm going to say local success error message equals P call function. Then we basically have that. So what we want to go ahead and do now is say local coins. So let's say we wanted to get the coins of the player. We'd go into player data, which is our existing data store that we defined up here. And then we want to say get async. And this will basically get information. And then we want to pass in our key. And this is where we want to get our things. So if you're using, it says here, if you are using all scopes, then basically you can do the scope / the key. So in our case, what I want to go ahead and say is currency / and then get the player's user ID. So every player in the game will have their own area. Also, this should be a string followed up with their user ID, which should also be a string. So let me just say toString and then say player.user ID like that. And so basically this will go into this currency folder or scope, and if it doesn't exist, then it obviously won't find it. So every player will have their own user ID that joins the game in this currency folder as their thing. So from here, what we want to go ahead and do is actually define currency / coins and then we'd say slash their user ID. So that would get the coins of that player. So next, you can obviously get the data. So we've gotten the data, but we need to save data there first in order to get data. So imagine this is an actual game. You can't just get the data out of nowhere. So if this data exists, then we could basically create a simple leaderboard, and I'll create that just to show. So I'll say local leader stats equals instance.new folder. And then I'll say leader stats.name equals leader stats. And also I should just create this in general, not just in this p call. So we'll create a leaderboard, and then we'll say local coins equals instance.new number value. And just to let you know, you have to spell it like this, leader stats, if you haven't done this before, in all lowercase for a leaderboard to show up. And we'll say coins is that, and we'll basically just say coins.parent equals leader stats. We also need to define the leader stats parent, which would be the player, which is defined right here when the player joins the game. So now we have our leaderboard. Let me just show you that leaderboard real quick. So here's our leaderboard. Actually, we didn't give it a name yet, so it's just called value, but you'll see there is a value there. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. So we'll say coins.name equals coins, and that should update. So after we get the data, we want to basically have a thing that happens. Normally you'd want to auto save or save when certain things happen. In my case, alright, so I just realized something. I was testing this. I don't believe in Roblox the server stays up long enough for this to save. So what I went ahead and did was basically made this while wait 5 statement right here. Hello, Editor Cheese God here. I forgot to explain how I actually saved my data, but basically all I did was use the same p call that I used to get the data, and then I basically used the same scope, which is the first value, and then I got the same user ID, and the only thing I really changed was at the end here, I actually give the coins value that I defined for the leader stats. So that's how that works. And this will basically wait 5 seconds and then execute this over and over just for the sake of testing. I believe this would work in an actual game, but I realized I was defining this value, not actually setting it. And also this was a duplicated value. So what I want to go ahead and do is say local coins data, and then coins.value equals coins data. And also you could just say coins.value equals this if you wanted to. So now this should load 50, unless it doesn't. Sure. Okay, so I think I'm going to remove this just because it was making the game a little slower to close. And what I basically went ahead and did, actually didn't really change anything, but I figured out why it was failing, and that's because I was joining the game, not changing anything, so it obviously didn't save. I don't know what's going on with my internet right now. So I'm going to go back into the server view, and now I'm going to change my value to 50. I'm going to go ahead and close the game and reopen it. Yeah, there we go, 50 coins. So that basically got that data from our existing thing and just basically set it to be that. So that's basically how you use scopes. You just define the key as a sort of folder structure. So currency/coins/that value. So with that, that's pretty much the end of the video. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.